unbelievable that a game printed on cardboard with pictures of Star Wars characters on it would have such an impact in my life.
There is something really special about this game, and we knew that.
The room is so full, people will go sit in the hallway and eat or get their decks in order. And it was really just, I mean, there were cards and people everywhere.
I mean, I knew it was just, this was fantastic, better than anything we had done.
It was everything kind of a Star Wars nerd kid could have dreamed of doing.
I won every game, and it kind of felt like, okay, I'm actually good at this.
It's meant so much more than a silly card game.
And Star Wars CCG is the game I lie awake at night and dream of how I'd do it different and what I would change and what little things I'd want to fix.
I played the second game, and I played my ass off.
I'm Warren Holland. I'm CEO of Decipher. My background is kind of connected, I guess, to my college days. I got a master's degree from Virginia Tech, and when I was there, I had this experience and this idea for doing a puzzle, which ultimately ended up being Decipher. So that started the company. And then we just kind of organically grew from there. It was a very interesting path for us.
Like that, we've acquired it, and the creating.
Well, the acquiring wasn't exactly that easy, but it worked.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So,
well, we met with them for a long time because they weren't familiar with the category, but we were doing so well in Star Trek that it was pretty evident that we would be able to do something substantial with Star Wars. And our first guarantee was $1 million, so it was a lot of money then. Way a lot of money then. And Lucas bought into the category, bought into us bringing some special skills to that. And they were enormously supportive. They really didn't have many licensees that used a lot of original images. They had a huge archive of stuff, and the archives were open to us. We could go in and get anything we wanted. But the truth is, they really didn't have the images that we needed to do something that was thousands of cards. So Lucas granted us the rights to go back and get the original internegatives for the 70 millimeter film that was in the archives at Fox. And we were the only people that had ever done that. We had a duplicate 70 millimeter film made of all three of the original films. And we ordered a video editor, film editor that actually was made in Germany that was about $80,000 at the time. And we would literally go in frame by frame by frame and cut the films up. And then we would have high resolution digital scans made of those images. And then we would bring all that stuff in the computers. And then we would go into the corners of, little places and pull out characters that had never really been shown before, and do all the digital enhancement for those characters.
My name is Mark Tuttle. 25-ish years ago, I started playing Decipher games with the Star Trek customizable card game. Got very involved with that. At the time, AOL was the big online connection point, right? And I was very active in the forums on America Online for the Star Trek game. And so much so that the company actually took notice. Tom Bronlick, who was one of the designers of the Star Trek CCG, noticed me and asked me to write some strategy articles for a book that was coming out that they were doing. So I wrote a bunch of stuff and a bunch of articles, strategy for cards and things like that, and submitted it all to Tom. And a couple of weeks later, they came back to me and said, well, they've decided to go a different direction with the book. They want it to be more of a picture book. So he said, but since we liked your work, we've got this other project that's coming up that we'd like some help with. And that was the Star Wars customizable card game. And so it's like, somebody asks you, do you want to work on a Star Wars game? Well, of course, the answer is yes. So I came on board as one of the first playtesters in the very first playtest group for the game. And in fact, one of the things that sticks out is one of the DecipherCons that we did probably one of the first broadcast esports events because we actually broadcast. We had cameras above the table on the game, and you couldn't see anything. You couldn't read the cards, but if you knew the game, you kind of knew what was going on. And we broadcast that, I think, on our website, which I know it was not nearly as.
I think I recall.
Yeah.
It was that 2000.
Yes. So I was the host, and then we had two guys that were casting the event that were, the play-by-play and color commentary. And I just remember thinking, like, what are we doing? Why are we putting this out on the net? But it was exciting because I don't think anybody had really ever done that at that point in time. I could be wrong. But I remember we put a lot of work into trying to broadcast that out. Like, I'm pretty sure that was on our website. I can't remember exactly. Now that happens every day. I mean, you turn on Twitch and there's, the 1,000 games being played daily. But in 2000, we were, trying to push that out.
I am Shannon McRandall, used to be Shannon Bexa, and I was hired to be the living person that was the face of the fictional character, Mara Jade, for the Decipher Star Wars game cards. And was it a Survey and Insider? And Mara was the fan favorite that had never been on film. So Decipher said, hey, let's do something with that. A card game sounded like a great idea, got all their approvals. Lucasfilm liked the idea. And they set out a casting call for a 5'9", 5'10", redhead, dancer type body, but strong. And I actually got in a little bit before the casting through the photographer that shot the whole thing. And they canceled their casting after they met me because I just looked like what they had pictured in their heads. So it was rather a simple, straightforward process to getting the job as Mara. But then, as we all know now, it grew from there. I'm an old school board game girl, so the idea of collecting cards and there's this intricate game that you could play with them, I'd never heard of it before. So the initial meeting was just kind of go in, see what it was all about, meet the people at Decipher, and they kind of got what they wanted from it, and I was just sort of exposed to the whole idea of this card game, and I went home. I had gone, when I left the first time, I went straight to a comic book shop. I thought, I've got to figure out who this woman is because I know I can do it. They had a board, a mock-up of all the different comic book covers and different artist ideas because she'd never really been pulled together with one look. It was just whoever drew it or painted it that day. It was what they thought Mara would look like. Or if they didn't even know Mara and they got the description of green eyes, red hair, strong, she's a fighter, she's kind of a badass. So by the time I went back for my second interview, I'd had time to pretty much read the first two books, which was, you know who she is. If you read those books, you know everything about her. Tim wrote with such passion about her, and she was a very detailed character. So I knew to stand up straighter. I knew to lighten my hair a little bit to make it that orangey or red. I got green contacts and put those in. So when I went back the next time, they were really, I think, kind of wowed that I would put that much effort into what we thought then was just this tiny shoot.
Okay, so it's a great story. So Mike and Steve and myself and Andy Clemma were kind of a group of guys in the Kashyyyk region. They were good, but we weren't great in the early 2000s and late 90s. You know, like I said, we come in fourth at a regional, we wouldn't win the regional, stuff like that. And in 2002, shortly after the license was lost, Andy Clemma and I were in a pizza shop. And we said, you know, this guy, Baron Fell and Lot Dog, they work really well together. And we got a napkin from the pizza shop. I was at college at the time. We were going to go, you know, party or whatever. And we wrote down a deck list for Senate. And we're like, this deck's great. And we played it the next day at the regional. And I won it. And I think he came in like third, didn't lose a game. Gave it to Mike Jem, emailed us like, hey, this deck is great. Plays all 4 political effects, which every time I did that, people were like scratching their head. It started in a boost system, but it could start the mall site. Just all these different things. And Mike came in second at his regional, which at the time qualified him for Worlds. And then it just kind of, we just didn't lose with that deck. And Brian Hunter mentioned that we were just on like a train of dominance in some TR or something like that. And people started calling us the KTOD for the Kashyyyk train of dominance. And that's just sort of when we started getting good. Mike won nationals that year. I came in second. We walked into Worlds feeling like we were the favorites. And then the following year, we just both had great years again. And then the following year in 2003 is when I think a lot of the Albany Star Wars players were doing different things. And Johnny Chu, and we had already interacted with him. We were friendly with him, but that's when we kind of formed our team with Johnny. And for that tournament, we actually also had Clint Hayes. The 4 of us were there. So that's the initial part of the KTOD. And then since 2003 till now, it's just been Steve, Mike, I, and Johnny.
My name's Doug Taylor, and I first heard about the game. I started playing Star Trek, which is another game that Decipher made. So I was playing that, buying cards for it, picking up Scry magazine. I was going on the early forums of the day back in AOL when that was a thing, and was going on the forums and kind of expressed some interest. And somehow the word got out. Websites were kind of a new thing. This was like still kind of early 90s. And Decipher kind of put out a call for volunteers. So I threw my name in the hat and said, I'd love to be a volunteer. What do I got to do? And they contacted me right away. Obviously, I was one of the first ones. I thought I'd waited maybe a little too long, but I was one of the first ones because they told me, hey, you can be whatever. You're going to be part of Red Squadron. And you can't be Red 5 like Luke, and Red Leader is the one for Decipher. But said almost everything else, 2 and 3 are gone, but you could be like 6. Like, that's Porkins. So no, how about 4? And they're like, 4 is wide open. So nobody knows who Red 4 is. I'm like, all right, I'll take it. Red 4 it is. How I got involved with the Players Committee was, as I recall, they put it, we knew the license was lost, and then they put out a call and said, if you're interested in this game and seeing this game continue, please write us basically a letter of resume. So I love the game, so I did. I sent in a letter, and I wasn't that surprised. At that point, I was, they'd just done this whole little Hall of Fame thing, and I was in the inaugural class of that. So I knew that I was playtesting all those games. I kind of knew I probably was in, but I didn't know who else would be. And they ended up picking 6 of us. That still was one of the coolest things ever. It was Joe Allred sends me an email going, because I didn't know what position. I honestly thought they're going to probably pick me for tournaments because I run these big, massive tournaments. They'll see that as my strength. So I was shocked because I hardly ever played because I usually ran tournaments. I've played in tournaments and I've won tournaments. I've done okay, but I'm not any great. I'm not on the level of most of these guys at all. So I was kind of shocked that they would pick me for design. So I was honored to be picked, but it surprised me a little bit. They picked Eric Olson, another really, really good player, and they said, you 2 are design. And then there was another guy for tournaments and a guy for marketing. And then 2 guys, if I remember right, for rules. So I was one of the 6 originals that they flew back there, and it was for like a whole weekend. It's like flew us back there and meet in the conference room and meet with lawyers and meet with Warren and all the different people, you know, design people, marketing people. We even divvied up sometimes. It's like, all right, I was design, so me and Eric are in a room with Tom Lischke and Mike Reynolds or whoever else, the design guys, and going over basic concepts of design. You know, what do you want to do? What are your goals? You know, really laying out. They kind of just passed the torch and gave us all sorts of info and said, hey, whatever you guys need. I mean, at the time, I think it was said over $1 million of product. They just said, we can't do anything with it. We can't sell it anymore. So we eventually loaded it all into a U-Haul truck. And it was literally spilling over. The tires looked like they were going to burst, and moved it across the country to a dude's garage. And it's like, we just took control, and it was just all connection by email. And there was a lot of questions in those days, a lot of legal questions of, you know, are we going to get shut down? Is this going to work? I didn't even remember till last night, kind of getting ready for this. I pulled out some old Star Wars stuff and was kind of thumbing through some of the old emails and stuff that I printed off. I had completely forgotten how much of a backlash we got from the fan community about the ideas of virtual cards. So many people saying, this is the dumbest idea, this will never work. Some of us were skeptical at the time. We're like, really, virtual cards? But we were willing to give it a try and see how it worked. But it's interesting to 18 years later or whatever it's been, to see that, you know, here's people playing with virtual cards still. And it was tough because, much like Decipher, we kept trying to keep every card available, and we kept doing new sets and new sets and new sets, and the card pool was becoming pretty unmanageable. And Scott was constantly the one saying, we need to pare it down. We need to just, you know, cut a bunch of them and maybe do different block sets and different ideas along those lines. But so, yeah, that's what the experience was like. It was very honoring to be taken back there, but they were really cool and just said, hey, it's all yours now. You guys get to do what you want with it.
I want to make sure that we thank the people that helped. The people that play, listen, they keep the game alive. But the people that originally volunteered, the people that still volunteer today, this game would be nowhere if we didn't have people volunteering to do the graphic design, having people design the cards 15 years ago, having people run tournaments. There are so many selfless people out there. And, you know, when I think of like Mark Walseth or Doug Taylor now when he used to run events and then became the first design advocate, or Eric Olson was a design advocate. Mark Walseth teaches this game to students at his school. He's responsible for bringing in new players. We have the people that Jeremy Gardner, who does the graphic design. You know, Mike Tomaszewski and Chris Kelly and Paul Bansel that originally did the proofing and rules of how to word a card. You know, we have all of these people, and the problem is there's 50 people I could name, and I know someone's going to look at this and go, oh, why didn't he name me? But that's what this game is. It's not just me. It's not just, you know, the advocates that we have now. You know, when I think about the game, I want everybody to have a good time. I want them to enjoy themselves. And I sometimes go too far in making sure they're going to be okay. But at the end of the day, that's what it's about for me. I just want them to have a good time. I want them to enjoy themselves because it's selfish for me. I enjoy spending the time for them. And if they're not coming to the events, I'm not going to see them. And it's really important to me to keep those friendships up because it is hard work. And I just want to make sure that they're enjoying themselves because at the end of the day, it makes me happy as hell.
So the 2000 World Championships for me could perfectly be described as a Cinderella run because it's the most unremarkable event. No one would have picked me to win. I wouldn't even pick myself to win. The day one in Orlando in 2000 decided to say, look, anybody who shows up will take the top 38 finishers to day two. So it was a huge, huge thing. And everybody believed that, oh, we can just show up at this tournament and you finish in the top 38, you get to play in the World Championships. There was 150-ish people, I think, in day one. And I just don't play well. It's like an 8-game tournament, and I think I lose my first game or something. And it's going into the final game for me. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to qualify for the World Championships. I'm just not having a good day. And I get paired against, I think, Evan Fitzgerald at the time. He was just a good player at the time. And I get lucky enough to beat him, but it's still like on the fence if I'm gonna make it to day two. So the final pairings come out and I get 36th out of 38th. So I'm like on cloud 9. I'm like, yes, I get to play in the World Championships. So we show up the next day and there's 80 players in day two. So they take all the regional winners and the 38 people who qualified in day one. And so it's a 12-game event. And an 8-game event, and they take the top 12 into the next day. So I win my first game, I win my second game. I play Bastion, he beats me. I play Kyle Craft, he beats me. So at some point I'm like 3-2, and I'm like, I need to win out. I don't know if I'm gonna do it. And then game 6, I win game 6. Game 7, I win game 7. And then it's like, this could happen. So, and I get my game 8, and I win, and it's like, what just happened? This person who finishes 36 out of 38 the first day has now gone 6-2, and I finish 8th out of 12. So my teammates and I are all freaking out. We're like, oh my God, this is happening. We're in day 3. And we go back to the hotel that night, and it's super late, and I'm super nervous, and I'm just like, oh, I can't, I gotta go to sleep. So I turned to Brian Twilliger and I'm like, Brian, it's 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I got to be up at 8. I'm like, Brian, I don't know what to do tomorrow. And the whole team is sitting there like, Matt, it doesn't matter. You're in day 3. This is great. And I'm like, Brian, just make my decks. I got to go to bed. So there's a mad scramble 3, 4 in the morning to put my decks together. And we realized at the time, like, if I'm gonna win tomorrow, we got to go crazy. So Brian is like, Matt, I think you should play ISB Sandworld. I'm like, that is the craziest idea I've ever heard. I love it. So I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning. He gives me my ISB Sandworld deck. And I look through it and I'm like, this is crazy. So there was also a rush that night to put my light side deck together. So I was playing Hidden Base X-Wings. So we decide, you know what, let's switch it up to play Hidden Base Inserts, because I actually loved playing Inserts at the time. So we put my insert deck together, but we forget a Luke Skywalker in my deck, which is a big deal at the time because the best dark deck was Bring Him before me. So I show up at the World Championships, day 3. Game 1, I have to play Clint Hayes. I beat him. Game 2, I have to play somebody with my ISB Samuel. Lock him down, I win. Now all of a sudden, I'm in day 3, and it's a 4-game event because it used to be round robin the day 3. And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. So then I play Yannick, game 3, and it's his dark, which is Bring Him before me versus my Hidden Base. Around round 3 of the game, I realize, oh my God, I do not have a Luke Skywalker in my deck. And Yannick proceeds to crush me that game. So at that point, I'm devastated because I don't believe that I can win the World Championships now. I've just lost. I had a good shot if I had a Luke in my deck. Oh well, at least I made it and I got a good story. So Decipher, one of the Decipher employees comes to me, Juz, and we're like, Juz, did we make it? What happened? And I'll never forget, it's me and my teammates. We're talking to him at a door. And Juz is like, yeah, you made it. And we just start screaming and running through the halls. And it's like, oh my God, I'm in the finals. How did this happen? I finished 36 day 1. I barely squeak in day 2. And now I'm in the finals of the World Championship. It's unbelievable. So I have to play Yannick. And Yannick knows that he's going to beat my light because he did beforehand. So there's this video of us playing the finals. And it's like an hour and a half. So for the first hour and 28 minutes, I'm playing the game and I'm just like, I'm going to lose the finals. And then we get to the second game and all of a sudden we're playing the game and it's like, I'm winning. And I'm winning by a lot, but I still don't think I'm going to win, by enough to beat him. So we're playing. And all of a sudden, it becomes apparent that like, oh my God, I could beat Yannick by more than he beat me by. And there's this funny scene in the video where, because I finally realize it, like there's 2 minutes left, and I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna happen. And the best memory for me is we're playing in a private room, and the World Championship is projected in the room next door on a big screen, and I can't hear anything except for the moment when I win. And I just hear my teammates erupt through the wall, and it was just the greatest feeling, one of the greatest feelings I've ever had in my life.